What I'd like to do is briefly give an overview of today's panel, mention a couple other things that are going on, and then just have everybody on the panel start to talk. As most of you know, the format's really informal. If you have questions while we're going, raise your hand, please. There could be some interactive discussion on any point that someone raises. You should feel free. I think that really adds to things. Today's topic is small and solo practice. As I was mentioning to someone before this event, I could have asked 50 other people to sit on this panel, maybe 100 more people, because so many of our graduates go into small and solo practice. It's for all sorts of different reasons, and we'll talk about the people who are in this panel about how they got started or why they got started. I would like to just say I think this group is a great representation of people who go into small and solo practice, but there are so many others as well. Each of our panelists, except our first, Jared, is an alum of the school. Jared is going to be a really great addition to this year's panel. I think he has a lot to offer, and I will talk a little bit more about that. The two handouts in the back. One is about small and solo practice. The real best part of this handout is what's on the back, and that's your checklist to get a small and solo firm running. Taken from a couple of years of doing these events. I can get some for you guys. You need those? All right. This is great, and I've gotten this from having panels like this and looking at things. I'm sure that, and for people who want to start like a mediation practice, they don't want to practice law, but it's the same thing. Any kind of a business, in a sense, there's some sort of basic things. There are obviously some things that are very unique about practicing law, but this is a great, great resource. I also have up there a handout about pathways to practice. This is the second year that this seminar is going to be taking place. Last year, they did this live simulcast to each of the 9 Massachusetts law schools, and so we had a live simulcast here in this room. This year, they are not doing that. It's still free, it's in Boston, but I think you can also do a live webcast, so at your home desk, wherever you want to be. It's a really great thing. It was basically designed by MCLE, Mass Continuing Legal Education, and this is all very geared at third-year students, recent grads, people who are out just a couple years who want to start their own practice or anything, want to get started in the legal field, don't know what they're doing, need some direction, some help, some assistance. I can't urge you enough to do this if you have any interest and to tell your friends about this. This is great. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that next Tuesday there is going to be another event here by the Mass Bar Association Young Leadership Division called Hang Your Shingle, Traps for the Unwary. Another really a great presentation. I think there's only one alum who's going to be on that panel, but there's going to be a lot of other area practitioners, including, I'm going to get Denise's last name wrong, Denise Squilante, who not only is a Fall River family law practitioner, but she is the president of the Mass Bar Association, and she really tries to do a lot of shout outs for this area, for the South Coast region, in the whole Mass Bar Association, which some people felt was very Boston-oriented only. So that's here also at the law school next Tuesday from 4 to 7. Linnea Mickles, did I get her last name right? I always say her name wrong. She is the person, she's at the Community Development Clinic. If you have any questions about that, you can ask her directly. So I've already spoken more than I wanted to. I'm going to briefly tell you who's here, and then I'm going to have them start talking. The first person, as I mentioned earlier, is Jared Correa. He is the Law Practice Management Advisor at Massachusetts LOMAP. LOMAP stands for Law Office Management Assistance Program. It's through the Mass Bar Association, Boston Bar Association, neither.
We're not affiliated.
Ah, okay, so I'm learning something myself. From what I have learned, if you want to start your own practice, these are the go-to folks. Nonprofit, really just want to help you get set up, point you in the right direction. They kind of give you some sort of consulting about it. So I'm very interested to hear what Jared has to say. I haven't heard him speak, although his reputation precedes him, and I think this will be very valuable. Next to Jared is not Fabian Powell. He will be here. Fabian recently opened his own practice with a classmate of his, Jared Tan's, and they're in Quincy. And when Fabian gets here, I'm sure he will have lots to say. He's a really pretty dynamic guy, and I'm sure he'll be. Did I say Fabian was going to walk in as soon as I said his name?
He was like, I heard my name.
Fabian, I have faith in you. I said, as soon as I say your name, you're going to show up. Please come here. So as I knew Fabian. So as I was mentioning, Fabian will speak after Jared, and a busy practitioner, still doing work. Feel free. Go ahead. Get yourself settled. Next to Fabian is Pat Matthews. He's class of '95. He works from Fall River, and he's going to, I think, of the panel, if I'm correct, Pat's been out of school the longest. Yes. So I think that doesn't mean you're the oldest, just that you've been out the longest. And sometimes it works that way. Yeah. And so I think that his insights are going to be the most interesting because he has the longest perspective in this game. Amber Cohn, class of '08. So there are 3 people from the class of '08 here. Amber's got a great story. Amber's now working at the place that she clerked at when she was in law school, and she's been there ever since. And that's a great lesson in and of itself. And I think there's a whole posse of SNESL graduates, including Schoenlin, who's Schoenlin and Associates it is, who are SNESL people. Southern New England School of Law, our old name. So I think Amber will have a lot to add, and she's very involved in the Bristol County Bar Association, which I'm sure she'll encourage all of you to be as well. And last but not least, Tony Sinersha, class of 2000. Tony works in Rhode Island, and he has both a law practice and I think it's a real estate related business. Is that right, Tony?
We have a national title company doing settlement work across the country.
So I think he'll talk about that. And then Tom Natoli, who told me he was going to be late, he was in court, but he really wanted to be here. He's recently opened up his own firm in Rentham, and again, because he's just in the midst of doing this and it's very new, I think his impressions and insights will be really, really valuable. So I'm going to have Jared start. I think everybody will probably talk for about, I don't know, between 5 and 15 minutes, really whatever sort of suits them. I'd like them to talk to you about their career path, how each of you got started in this, some of the things that I think students might find interesting, what's a typical day like, you know, what are the things you love about being in a smaller solo practice, and what are the things that are really the drawbacks. What do you suggest for them to do if they want to do this? If this is their path, what ideas do you have? And then last but not least, at the end, something I've been doing this year with all of my events is that, you know, little words of advice, words of wisdom that you might want to impart upon the group. Last year, one of the big advices people said was take time off if you're in a smaller solo practice, and I was already talking to people about that this morning, some of our panelists. So those kind of things, just little tidbits of information. So Jared, do you want to stand or?
I am actually. I think I can't see anyone over there.
Yeah, yep, I know you and I talked about it. So I'm going to sit in your seat, and I'm actually going to get Amber her handouts first.
Thank you, yeah.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad you let me through the doors, even though I'm not an alumnus. And when I was talking to Leslie, I promised I wouldn't stand, but now I'm standing. And it's solely because I could not see anyone over here in this field of vision. So how are you folks? So just, I'm going to do a little twofold thing here, and I won't talk for very long because I want to give these fine people a chance to talk as well, and allow you folks to ask questions if you want. So first, let me tell you that I was a practicing attorney. Emphasis on was, because I wised up, and I'm out of that racket now. My apologies. So I'm from New Bedford, actually. so it's sort of good to come back down here. I can pop in after this panel and visit my mom, who's still a school teacher in the area. And then when I go home tonight, I drive up to Gloucester, which if anybody knows Gloucester, that's basically New Bedford North. So I commuted like a couple hours up the road essentially.
Our associate dean is from Gloucester and does that commute all the time,
Oh,
believe
really?
it or not.
Boy, excuse me. I don't know if I do it every day. Today is fine. So I graduated from Suffolk Law School in 2003. Went to St. Anselm College in New Hampshire. Graduated in 2000. I was on the debate team there. We came in second in the country. Very good team. So that's when I started to think, hey, I should probably be a lawyer because I can argue and stuff. And then I went to law school. So I graduated from Suffolk 2003. I said to myself, all right, I don't want to open up my own practice because I didn't really know a whole lot about it. There were no services like ours at that time. And I said, I'm going to work for solo and small firms because I had interviewed at some large firms and I wasn't liking the vibe there. So I worked for small firms for about 2 or 3 years, one in New Bedford, in fact. And the issue I always had was that the people I was working for, although they were good lawyers, they didn't really seem to have much of an idea of how to run the business of a law practice. And that was frustrating for me because I was trying to fit myself into this business as a new attorney and finding it very difficult to do so. The other issue that I had was that I was laid off a couple times because although I was doing decent work, basically in small practice, especially solo firms, if you're the one associate in the firm, you're talking about being at the mercy of essentially one person's income. So if somebody has a firm, they're funding with some of their own money, there's a downturn or they have some financial difficulty on their own, the firm may start to hemorrhage money. And being the first person in, or the last person in, you're the first person out. That's what happened to me a couple times. So I said to myself, okay, practice of law is okay, but I don't like this this thing where I'm going to different firms and they seem to be running out of money constantly, even though everyone tells me I'm doing a good job. So I decided to do some administrative work instead. So I said, all right, I'm going to go work for the Massachusetts Bar Association. And after about 4 years of practice, I joined Mass Bar in their CLE department. So I managed their publications and CaseMaker, their research engine. Worked there for about 3 years, and now I've been at LOMAP for about 3 years. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about LOMAP. That's my background. LOMAP is a free service. We're a nonprofit. We're free to every attorney in Massachusetts. We're free to every law student in Massachusetts, if you're intending to practice in Massachusetts. A lot of people think that we're affiliated with bar associations because there are other programs like ours in the United States and Canada that are affiliated with bar associations, but we are not. We're a standalone organization. We get our funding from attorneys' bar dues. So although I say that we're free, you're actually paying for us in some way as soon as you start paying your bar dues. 6% of attorneys' bar dues goes to Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers, and a percentage of that comes through to LOMAP, and that's how we're funded. And everything we do is free. Everything we do is confidential. Because obviously, if we're talking about issues that attorneys have with running their practices, then part of that problem is they don't necessarily want that to get out, detrimental potentially for clients and referrals. So we keep everything under the radar. So let me just give you a quick rundown of what we provide for services, and then I'll be open to questions afterwards or during or however you want to work this. So we're free. We're confidential, and what we do is law practice management consulting, which is everything you don't learn in law school, which is what I tell people. Law school teaches you how to do the substantive practice of law in your classes. You have panels like this, and you do have some classes that are coming up that do practice management, but we focus solely on how do you run the business of a law practice. We get a lot of solo attorneys. We get a lot of small firm attorneys. They've either come right out of the law school, or they've been practicing with somebody else for a while, and they don't know how to open an IOLTA account, for example. So we run down.
Explain to them what that is.
Oh, an IOLTA account. Good segue. An IOLTA account is your trust account as an attorney. So at times, you're holding client funds, which is money that you've gotten from clients that you haven't done the work on yet.
Like a retainer.
Like a retainer. In order to get paid, a lot of attorneys will ask that their clients give them a retainer, so say $5,000 to start. But you're not doing $5,000 worth of work immediately. You're parsing that out over, say, 10 or 15 hours, depending on your billing rate. So you can only draw that money out as you do the work. So you have to put that money in a trust account, it's called, and that money, that's like an escrow account, essentially. And all that interest from all the attorneys who have all the trust accounts in Massachusetts aggregates, and it's pushed out to nonprofits. That's how a lot of the legal nonprofits are funded in Massachusetts.
And this is how a lot of lawyers get themselves in a lot of hot water because there is money that's not theirs and it gets them in a lot of trouble. I'll say no more.
And then they come see me, and we try to bail them out. But it's very important to get the trust accounting down, and that's just one aspect of opening a practice. But there's ethical rules tied to how you handle money as an attorney, especially client funds. So people can come to us, get that squared away, get some other issues squared away as well. So how do we offer consulting? We do in-person meetings, we do firm audits, we do phone calls, conference calls, emails. We've got tons of resources. We email information and links to people. We do internal resources that we create ourselves. We deal with local stakeholders in the legal community so we can pass their information along to you. And we're also connected with 37 other LOMAP offices across the United States and Canada. So we have a wide-reaching array of resources that we can pass along to you. So we're for Massachusetts attorneys on a volitional basis. So if you want to come and talk to us about starting a practice, that's totally fine. But we also see people from the Board of Bar Overseers who are going to get their license pulled unless they come to see us, and unless we tweak their law office practices. Hopefully no one in this room ever comes to us for that reason, but we do see those folks as well. So that gives us insight as to a broad array of issues that attorneys experience. So what do we talk about the most on the business side of practice? We talk about technology applications for efficiency. That's a big thing right now because attorneys are trying to use technology and software to become as efficient as possible. Other thing we talk about is marketing. Big questions about marketing. If you're starting a firm, you need clients before you can do anything. I mean, it's great to think that, yeah, you're going to sit there and do research and get into the substantive practice of law, but you need clients before you can do that. You need people's cases to work on. So we founded a marketing group that's been pretty popular, and we have about 115 attorneys in that right now. Meets via web conference every month, and anybody's free to join that, including law students if you're interested. We talk about client relations, how to best deal with your clients, how to set expectations for your clients so they're working with you and you're not working entirely for your clients. That's an issue we see a lot with attorneys. But we'll let the clients master the relationship rather than them taking control of what the relationship should be. We teach office management techniques, financial management plus trust accounting as we talked about. How do you manage all your documents? I still get calls from attorneys who have 30 years worth of files in the garage and they say, what do I do? And I say, do you have a time machine handy? But you folks have it good because you can sort of deal with these document management systems ahead of time. We talk about data security. There's a Massachusetts data security law that became effective on March 1, 2010. And so now if you're holding certain types of information, like social security numbers, you have to protect that in a certain way using encryption, essentially, where you're talking about information that you're saving on your computer or on your server. All the sort of things we talk about. We've got 2 full-time counselors and we've got an administrative assistant. We'll probably be hiring someone to do some IOLTA work for us shortly, or an administrative person in the near future, so we're expanding. We see about 320 new clients a year. So between the 2 of us, we're pretty busy. So a couple of the things we do is we set up these groups so we can deal with discrete issues. People have marketing questions, we say join our marketing group. Talk to us that way. People who are starting up firms, we ask them to come in for a startup meeting first. We run those every month at our office, where we say, okay, here are the 12 or 13 or 14 things you need to consider. The main things you need to consider to start your practice. And then we'll have continuing contact with you from there and answer your questions that develop after the fact. And I just wanted to run down a few more resources here and then I'll end. I mean, you've got pamphlets in the back there, these yellow pamphlets, that's us. I brought highlighters, I bought pens. Please take them because I don't want to take them back up. You've got all our info on here. You've got our website and our blog. Our website we update regularly. Front page is going to have a new tip on it every week. Our blog publishes once or twice weekly. It's picked up by the ABA, so it's a national blog. So we get a lot of resources from a lot of people that we push out there. That's a good resource. We write articles from time to time, which we publish to our website under a white paper section. We have a newsletter that we publish every 3 months, so if anybody's interested in that, you just sign up at our website. We're on social media pretty heavily as well. We're the first LOMAP program to have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/MassLOMAP. Go on and like us, and you'll get all our updates in your newsfeed. Make it real easy for you. We're on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at Jared Korea. Put out a lot of information daily that way. We've got a LinkedIn page as well, LinkedIn for MassLOMAP. Search for that. And if you like us, feel free to recommend us and follow us. We've got 2 podcasts that we run. And I have to keep a sheet of paper because it's tough to remember all this stuff. LegalTalkNetwork.com. We've got 2 shows. One is called The Unbillable Hour. The other is called The Legal Toolkit. And we talk about law practice management issues there. It's a pretty good way to get to listen to some law practice management stuff when you're jogging or whatever. You can download those programs on iTunes. Those are free as well.
What was that website?
Legal Talk Network, and there are other legal podcasts on there as well. If that's something you have an interest in. We do presentations like these. Let me see if I'm missing anything. I talked about our startup group. Yeah, and that's basically what we do. So, I mean, I never do the hard sell for attorneys. We're funded by attorneys for our dues. We're ultimately answerable to the Supreme Judicial Court, so we're a legit entity. So, free, confidential resources. If you want to use us, definitely take advantage of it. And if anybody wants my cards, they can email me directly and talk to me afterwards. But I'm looking forward to hear from the rest of the folks here, and if we have some law practice management questions, I can answer those.
I can't impress upon you what an awesome, amazing resource this is. I mean, this couldn't make things easier for you on so many levels, and I'm really excited that UMass is around, and now I know why my colleague really encouraged me to have you come here, because this is, I'm sure, just the tip of the iceberg. Jared is being really kind and making sure that everybody else could talk, but I know he could probably talk to you guys for an hour and a half himself, and it would be very interesting. This is really great stuff. I'm sure our panelists are interested to hear what you have to say as well, to be perfectly honest. I think typically what we'll do is, we'll have the rest of our panelists talk from their seats, if that's okay with everybody, to keep it casual. Our final panelist, Thomas, is going to be here. He's still in court, running a little late, but he's on his way. So Fabian, why don't you sort of tell us a little about what's going on at Tienz and Powell LLP?
Sure.
How you got started? Kind of what's it like being in a small and solo practice?
Being in a small and solo practice, it's interesting because I'm in a partnership. I have a partner, a law partner. We have a legal assistant and we have a full-time paralegal. But my job at the firm, my typical day is really running around because we have a second office out in Fitchburg. Any day of the week, I may be out in Fitchburg, I could be in Worcester. We kind of go all over the state doing a lot of cases. On top of that, I also do a lot of the marketing for the firm. I go to networking groups. I encourage you all to join networking groups with other professionals, particularly the types where you can hold one seat. So if you're a bankruptcy attorney, you hold a bankruptcy seat, and that's it. Because that way, anybody that runs into those issues in that group are going to refer them to you. So I do a lot of networking groups. I do a lot of marketing. Our base that we market to tends to be bilingual, usually Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, Spanish. Our paralegals speak Spanish and Portuguese, so it's natural that we're going to attract those folks as clients. So we have marketing in the Brazilian Times. We just shot a commercial for Brazilian TV. I think it's channel 680 on Comcast. I full-time on the Brazilian gala circuit. Always at all the events. I always try to get into magazines. I've been on a few of their talk shows.
What is the firm? Do you have an area of expertise, or do you have a general practice?
It's more of a general practice, but I would say we cover areas like family law, bankruptcies from the consumer side. Immigration is probably our largest area of practice, and given the nature of immigration issues nowadays, that's an area that we are always keeping busy on. We do some debt settlement through a company. We represent debtors in that capacity, some PI, and some civil litigation. So we cover a wide spectrum.
Do you find that these issues are sort of interrelated? If one has one issue, they have another issue, and that's kind of why the practice has evolved that way?
Yeah, what's happened with us is at times we tried to say, well, maybe we should just focus on this, but when these clients come through the door, they don't look at you as the guy that is the real estate attorney or the attorney that just does bankruptcy. They want you to handle every issue, from child support to they got rear-ended and now they're hurt. They want you to cover all of their legal areas. So, but getting back to a typical day, what I always run into is that I'm always either there late on the weekends because I'm out running around, and unfortunately, when I go back, I still have my own work to do. So if you more want to concentrate on a particular area of law, it may not necessarily be the area for you, depending on your background, because you end up becoming a jack of all trades, and it is hard to be, to keep that up, but it's also hard to focus it over time, depending on your clientele.
What do you like the most about being your own boss, and what do you like the least about it?
I like the fact that, we end up being the ultimate decision makers. I like the fact that you could kind of control your own destiny. If you market hard enough, give out enough cards. I mean, I've learned actually how to become an unabashed self-promoter. I hear a lot that people say I'm my own biggest advocate. They've never seen anyone promote themselves as much as I did. And how I came to that point was I went to a MBA, a Mass Bar Association panel, and they said, do not feel bad about selling yourself. And I just completely bought in. I mean, we have a Facebook page. My own Facebook page, I don't even really talk about anything personal. I usually talk about, I was in court today on this issue, so-and-so, because I want everybody in my network to realize that, when you have a legal issue, come to me, I want them to realize that this is what I do, and I want you to come to me if these issues come up in your area. I mean, I get my mom works at a nursing home. She gives out cards to every possible person. I mean, these people are going to be your network, so don't feel bad when you have your brother, pass cards out at work. I mean, anyone because even though, you got a question?
After you.
Yeah. Even though at that time they may say they have an issue and they don't call that week, that month, or even that year, they're eventually going to call. They will. So.
If a client comes into your office and they speak another language, is it acceptable to have your assistant who knows the language to basically be the translator?
Yes.
Even though the attorney doesn't know the language?
Yes, I mean, I do know some Spanish and a little bit of Portuguese, but without her, I mean, the practice in many ways would be crippled in terms of serving those clients.
And she keeps everything confidential. I think
Yes.
that's maybe what you were getting at, the
Yes.
confidentiality.
Yeah, you're allowed with a necessary third party, to forward the legal relationship. So.
What do you think your biggest drawbacks about being a solo practitioner?
The biggest drawbacks is that it really never stops. While that's good, if you're the sort of person that gets fixated and you can't sleep when you always have stuff to do, it may not be the area for you, because there is always stuff. I mean, on top of practicing law, you also have to worry about money, bringing new clients in, paying your bills. I mean, it really is running a business along with the practice of law, because sometimes every now and then I used to take a look at firms and see mid-level firms or firms with 10 people or so, and certain people have specialized areas, and you wonder how did they become so accomplished in those areas? Well, because at the end of the day, they're probably not the decision makers. They're just working on the cases. And with us, I mean, it's so many things at once, all the time.
So what happens, someone comes to you, it's an area you're like, I have no clue, I haven't even touched this before. How do you deal with that?
Is there a point at which you make referrals is maybe your question? Is
Either that or if it's a mentor, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, good thing you brought up the mentorship. Our primary office is in Norfolk County in Quincy. We sent out a request to the Bar Association director for mentors, because they have a mentorship program. Well, we ended up getting, we were doing coffee and lunch for like 2 weeks, all the responses. And we ended up getting actual work from the attorneys because they saw us, they liked us, and it ended up leading not only to mentorship, but it also led to business as well. And also attorneys that you can refer stuff to, because some of them are medical negligence attorneys. I don't practice that area yet, but it's good. It's a case like a medical negligence that comes in. I'm learning as I go, so the more complicated ones I would more likely refer out. But if it's something I could figure out, we could put our heads together and figure out, I would do it. But if it's an area that, like a patent or something like that, I don't have a patent background,
right.
So I wouldn't recommend doing it if you have no idea
right.
how to go about it.
Pat?
Well, okay. After listening to these two guys, I think I'm in the wrong business. Unfortunately, I've been doing it for 16 years. I think I'd echo what Fabian has to say about the time aspect of the job. you know, an old lawyer told me one time, the benefit of being a solo practitioner, being self-employed, is you get to pick which 80 hours a week you work. and it's true. You know, sometimes you can get out, like, you know, with my boys and stuff, I could go out and go to a hockey game or go to a baseball game, but you have to go back usually and do some work, and that's something that some people can't adjust to because they're used to doing a 9 to 5. And 9 to 5, if you're going to be a solo practitioner, just does not work. Just a little bit about my background is that prior to becoming an attorney, before I went to law school, I owned an insurance company, and I also was a writer. I did technical writing in the financial field. And what was good for me is having an insurance business was when I became an attorney, I had all these different people I already had contacts with. And so I was able to get a lot of business from people that used to be my customers. Now, and I knew how much they had for insurance, so it was very, very helpful. And so that was really good. But from a business standpoint, I know Fabian mentioned the fact handing out your business cards and going to all these different social networks. I'll tell you what, being involved in your community is a really big thing. Everything I've ever done through 16 years of being involved in my community has one way or another paid off.
So in other words, you're talking about not just volunteering your legal skills, but being a coach of a baseball team or being involved in your church or your temple or something like that because you're meeting people.
Exactly, and tell everybody you're an attorney. I'll just give you one quick story. I was coaching.
Except when you're at a bar.
Yeah.
Late at night. Do not do that.
Oh yeah, that's true.
That is bad. Get all the drunks. Listen, I want your help. It's like, whoa, okay.
I would agree with that.
Thank you. I got to put in a little side note.
I was actually coaching a football team, and there was 3 other coaches on the team with me, and actually one of the other coaches was an attorney. And we had halfway through a season, one of the coach's brother got killed in a car accident, and they came to me with the case. And I ended up, doing fairly well with the case. And at the end of the season, when it looked like it was going to be a good case, the other guy came to me, the other attorney, says, I'm mad. He says, and I said, why? He said, well, I've been coaching with him for 4 years. And he didn't go to him, with the case. He came to me. He says, I said, I thought we were friends and everything. And so I went to him and I said, he's really mad about this. And I said, is there any reason why you didn't go to him instead of me? He goes, I didn't know he was an attorney. He really didn't know he was an attorney. And so that's you have to let everybody know. If you're, I'm not afraid to tell people I'm an attorney. I'm proud to be an attorney. I think it's a great profession. I think it's a vocation as opposed to just a job. And you got to let people know about that. And I think it's really good. But the thing is that you're going to work a lot of hours, and that's the bottom line. My company, I have a firm. It's called Coastal Legal Affiliates. We have I have 2 other attorneys in the office with me, and staff from time to time. One of the things that Fabian said, once again, he's starting this process. I've been in it for 16 years, and I'll tell you, the balancing of the business and the law is a very difficult thing. What happens is in addition to going to court in the morning, like I'll give you an example. He talks about a typical day. This morning I was in Plymouth District Court. I came here at 2:30. I'll be doing a bankruptcy hearing in Brockton, the 341 creditors hearing. It's not unusual for me to be all over the state, just like Fabian. And in addition to practicing law and having to know the legal aspects of what you're talking about, because that's what you're getting paid for, you also have to manage a business. I can't tell you how many times I got the phone call, my secretary telling me, oh, by the way, my son's sick. I'm not going to be in today, or you have a management problem with another person, or hey, listen, the copiers broke down. I mean, all the things that managing a business entails. All right, you've got that on top of practicing law. And I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from being a solo practitioner. I think that some of the things that Jared was talking about, I wish he was around, and they may have been, when I started, and because I've learned the hard way, you know, going through each and every one of these steps. So basically, you know, my firm, we're a general practitioner. We do civil law, criminal law. I do a lot of trials. I do, just recently got done with a five-day rape trial in Superior Court in Fall River. I do Superior Court trials in civil. One of my biggest areas, and I was talking to Tony about this, which kind of where one of my biggest areas of practice is I represent towing and recovery companies. I basically, once a month I do seminars, and I speak throughout the country to towing and recovery companies about how to get paid for their bills and things of that nature. But if you're going to be a solo practitioner, you've got to look for business everywhere. You really can't. It's hard to focus in on one area. Otherwise, you could starve. You could have, like the practice that Jared was talking about, that all of a sudden you got to start getting rid of people because of that. But it is rewarding. I think that it's a great field, but if you're not willing to work a lot of hours, and if you need direction, that's the other thing. If you're a person that needs somebody to point to you every the question you asked the Fabian of what do you do if you don't know about it, okay? You know, if you need direction on everything, this isn't going to be the field for you. Another thing that's good though is if you can associate with other attorneys. Like my office, if we had an empty office, we rent it out to another attorney, and it's great because if you have a question, if you can walk down the hall and say, hey, listen, have you ever had this happen, or what should I do? That's a great resource for you. So it's good to associate with other attorneys, and it's good to build up a network of attorneys that you can bounce things off of without violating attorney-client privileges. You've got to be careful in a small community, because sometimes you'll be calling up and you'll say, hey, Joe, I got this case, and you'll explain the whole thing to them and say, hey, you know what? I got the person on the other side, you know, and you've just told your whole case to them. So you got to sort of be a little bit careful.
What kind of, besides being hardworking,
Yeah.
what other skills do you think come into play for a successful, well, I should say, you also, not only hardworking, you said someone who's an independent thinker. What other kind of skills do you think kind of come into play in being a successful small and solo practitioner?
I think that you have to be a marketer of yourself, as Fabian said. You got to be able to sell yourself. I think that you have to just be a good listener, believe it or not. Yeah, I mean, people will, as you're sitting there, one of the things that I think that you got to be careful, Fabian said that people want you to be everything to them. You know, that they want you to handle everything for them. You got to be very careful with your fee agreements, that people understand exactly what you're representing them on. Because very often, you'll find that you're in the middle of say, doing a divorce, and then the person for some reason gets arrested, and you get the phone call. Now, you more than likely you want to take that criminal case, but it's not for the same dollars that you're doing the divorce on, and people get that all blurred. They get blurred, and you have like creep. You'll have certain clients that all of a sudden you realize that you're handling like 8 different matters for them, but they're only really paying you on one. And that's another thing you got to be careful. So managing people is important too.
I make a point to that. People, and you have to be slightly cynical after a while. People love free advice, and it's not that you don't want to help them, but they will be someone who will call you up in the same sense. They'll call you up and, oh, you know, I have this problem. You know, let me just tell you, you know, half an hour later, you know, you're still talking to them, and you're like, you know, and a lot of times, on top of that, not getting paid for it, a lot of insurance, malpractice insurance, they explicitly request that you know, do not give out free advice, because not only, you know, somebody could act on it. I heard a good story. I was at an MBA.
Legal malpractice.
Yeah, legal malpractice. I was at an MBA event, and someone mentioned that an attorney was just at a completely informal setting, you know, like a family party or something like that, and he mentioned something, and somebody else acted on it, and in the end ended up bringing a lawsuit against them and winning. And this was written up in Lawyers Weekly. So just be careful when people call you up for free advice, and if they want to come in for a consultation, industry practices in certain areas you don't, but I would recommend that you do charge. That way you weed out the people who are serious and the people who aren't serious and the people who are just looking for free advice. So
I could just, a little technique I use all the time is when I bill for every single phone call. All right, it's on my bill. I keep track of every phone call. I write down notes on everybody I speak to, and I bill for it. But a lot of times, when I send out the bill, I'll give them a discount I list the phone call, but give them a no charge. But when I get a retainer in on a case, most likely it's usually a divorce. All right, you get the case, you get the retainer, and within the first 2 weeks, you are on the phone every single day. All right, I immediately send these people a bill showing that the phone call's coming off their retainer, and it stops. Because now they realize they've been talking to me, because I'm now their counselor, and listen, I'm more than happy to do it, but all of a sudden, they gave me a $5,000 retainer, and they noticed that, $1,000's gone to those phone calls. They stop. So that's a good way to limit conversation.
Amber.
Okay, well, let me just give you a little bit of background.
Sorry, was there a question? I just had a quick question about the fees. How do you set your fees?
Well, I either take a case on a flat fee, an hourly fee, or I take it on a contingency. And obviously, personal injury are going to be contingency fees, but although my fee agreement clearly states out what my hourly rates are and all that stuff.
And I think it depends on geographically where you are. You want to get the market rate for what you're looking to necessarily, what the fee agreement entails. Figure out what everybody around you is charging. And, you decide from there whether or not you want to mark it up, mark it down, or just stay right there in the middle.
industry practice too, like in certain areas, bankruptcies are kind of set depending on what. Certain types of divorces, if it's uncontested, very simple, you could do a flat fee, but anything outside of that, get paid hourly because.
I never do a flat fee on a divorce. Never.
No.
You will get bit.
There's no such thing as a non-contested divorce.
Just not.
But what you need to do is, we actually have a spreadsheet, an estimator, that takes into account things like how many witnesses there are, how many, what the legal issues are, is it likely to go to trial? And then we calculate it, and then what we do is we give a thing called a fair estimate of fees and services to the client. Then, and it's not, it's an estimate, you know what I mean? And then we also have a signed fee agreement, but it gives you an idea of what things are going to cost. That's important for you from the business standpoint, because you don't want to be going into a case and telling a person that you think it's going to be $3 grand, and then it ends up being $6 grand. Because I'll tell you what, once you're in the case, you're not out. That's a big problem.
Another thing that people often do is when they come up with these estimates, at least we used to do this where I used to practice law, is we then mark it up 10 or 15%. Because the best thing that can ever happen in that case is that we come in under budget. And that looks great. But if we don't and we go over a little bit, we're still covered and it's still within the estimate that we gave. We could also go over 10% and we say, well, we're still within the estimate, but that way you give yourself a little bit of a buffer and maybe even look good for coming in under budget.
There's a great saying that says, you'd rather be a lawyer that's not busy and not getting paid than a lawyer that's busy and not getting paid. So.
The other thing is, look, there's a big trap out there, and everybody's done it. I bet you anybody sitting here has done it. Is that you give the person a quote, it's going to be $5 grand, and they say, I can come up with $2,500, right? And you're going to watch that $2,500 walk out of your office, okay? You make the bad short-term decision because you've got overhead, you've got all these other things, and you take that case. It's a bad short-term decision. If you tell them $5 grand, you should try to really get the $5 grand. Or if you're going to take less than the $5 grand, what you got to do is say, listen, by such and such a date, you got to have the other 1,000, and then you got to have the balance by this date. You got to live to that.
And there was another question, I believe.
It was answered.
Okay.
I'm going to add a little caveat to what Patrick said. Our office runs 2 different sets of rates. If we're in state court, it's one particular rate. If we're in U.S., completely different. It's almost double what we charge if we're literally doing local work, because we're dealing with a lot of issues, and it's multi-jurisdictional. So you're dealing with cases, whether they be in Connecticut, or some of you may be practicing in multiple jurisdictions as I do. So it becomes very time-consuming. So you have to set a much higher hourly rate.
Amber.
Okay, so let's see. My background, just real brief. I started working for the firm that I'm in 2003. And I began my law school career, I believe, in 2004. I worked full-time the entire time, 4 years. I was a night student and have obviously been hired on, and now actually Rod and I partner up. So we have also 2 other associates. We have Tom Cleary, who some of you may know, who's the director of the law review here, and Attorney Silva, who is the chief of homicide over in New Bedford Police Department. So we will all work together. We're all graduates of SNESL. And also my assistant is, I think she's a second year here, Janice Sapp. So I very much capture this school and what we stand for. I just want to say, kind of to start, that being an attorney, regardless of whether or not you're in a small firm, is time consuming. I oftentimes run into attorneys who are in large firms who have to bill 1,800 hours in a year.
2,400 hours a year.
And let me just warn you that a billable hour is not an hour in real time. So you are working nonstop regardless. And this law school, although it teaches you the substantive law, it certainly is going to get you in the mode of working and working hard. And that is a good thing about this school in particular. And some of the skills that you do learn in law school, although maybe not considered practical, all the skills can be applied in a small firm situation. For example, the organizational skills that you have to learn in order to be prepared for class. In order to run a successful small firm, in my opinion, you have to be organized, you have to be efficient, and you have to really think farther out than just next week. A lot of these cases, when they come in, depending on what kind of case they are, you have to have a plan, you have time frame, you have to figure out within the budget of the fee structure how you're going to effectuate what the goal is of the client. The bottom line is that if you can do that up front, you're going to save yourself a lot of time and money in the long run. And procrastination, just like with law school, is a very bad thing. You're behind the ball on a case, and your whole caseload gets thrown. So I just give that as far as using your skills that you're going to be learning here, and maybe you already have. I know we have a mixed crowd. As far as marketing for the firm, I approach it very differently. My boss, he's the B&I guy. I don't go to any marketing groups whatsoever. I don't do any, we don't pay for advertising other than our website. I believe fully that this profession is based on integrity and your reputation in the courts and your reputation with your peers. I certainly hold that to be very true, and it starts right now with your classes, and it starts right now with your professors and the community that you are going to be exposed to throughout your education, and obviously, whichever career you so choose. I had made it, pretty early on in school that my palette is life, right? Work is life. So this is not, you almost absorb the livelihood of being an attorney. You are always an attorney. You don't really come off of it. It's not like a 9 to 5. I think, the panelists have already said that. No client is worth your reputation. So no matter what the client is asking you to do, you need to really think clear and hard about what you're about to present to the court or to the other side, and think about how that is going to affect your business, because I will tell you right now, I've seen attorneys go down in flames. They're not getting other referrals. They're not getting the calls. And frankly, the discussions, because everybody gossips, discussions at bar meetings or whatever, it's like, can you believe this? Can you believe that? So you really want to make sure you're always on, and even in social settings, it's very important. I would say that #1 source of my referrals are other attorneys. We do run a general practice. I primarily do family law. So that basically, when I graduated and passed the bar, my boss handed the entire family law practice to me because he just was tired and he wants to do all criminal and business law, which is fine because when I was in school, I handled a lot of the family law, so I had a lot of groundwork on that and was able to basically get inserted right into court, which is the only facet I did not have my experience with. I would say that as far as competency on cases, whenever you start, regardless of where you are, you have the burden of working 10 hours for every one issue or whatever you need to fulfill. So at first, it's going to seem like an incredible mountain that there's just no way you'll ever know who's standing next to you, who's had 15 years experience, and he's seen all the tricks and the trades, and the judges, what the judges want and what the judges don't want to hear. It's an incredible mountain, so I just like to not think of it like that. And I just like to narrow it down. And the bottom line is that you deal, just like in law school, you deal with the issue presented. You don't overthink it. You don't necessarily get yourself completely burdened down with what the end result may be. You just deal with what's in front of you in that moment. And don't be afraid to say to the client, I am not 100% sure what the legal argument may be here, but if you want, you can pay me to research it. And you get some money in, you draft the retainer to research it, and it's a flat fee. I'll put 2 hours, and it may take you 5 hours, but you know what? You've got a little cash in your pocket. You've just now learned some more. You've instilled some faith with the attorney or with your client that, you know what? I'm not afraid to say I need to figure this out. And that's okay too. You certainly don't want to misrepresent that you've handled all these cases and it's your first one. I mean, I think that goes against the ethics, your code. So the bottom line is that those are a couple kind of practice tips. I call it don't drink the client Kool-Aid. Haven't I been wronged and haven't I? And it's like if it doesn't usually pass the muster of your basic legal training, they probably, go with your gut. And a lot of times, I would suggest your relationship with your client is very important. So if you don't feel comfortable talking to them openly about these issues, it's probably not a good match. And don't be afraid to turn down business, although I know a lot of small practices, they get anxious. My boss is always like, they're not going to come through the door. I'm like, they're coming through the door. Don't you worry. They're coming through the door. Because it gets you're very nervous about the business side of it. And when you run a small practice, for example, like transactional practice where you make, $1,000 for a will or estate plan or whatever, and you do real estate transactions, it's very transactional, versus my practice, which is billable. I do all of my time is billable. Every second of my day is accounted for. This is going to be considered business administration. So, for example, and like he said, you're constantly, every phone call, whether or not at the end of the day, because I edit all the invoices that go out of our firm, I decide to waive a fee or waive a time, that's different. But you need to be able to look at your practice and figure out where your time is really being spent. If you're driving a ridiculous amount of time to here, then guess what? I'm calling my secretary and I'm saying, listen, you're doing a really shitty job in managing my time. You need to make sure that the clients that I want to see in Bristol County are on this day, and that's it. If they can't make it, they wait 4 weeks. The bottom line is you should not be driving using the windshield time, I call it, unless, for example, it's an emergency and you have no choice, obviously. But time management is so key to running an efficient business. I certainly, and again, the timekeeping strategies and figuring out where you're putting your time is going to help you really tailor down what you're doing and how you're doing it. One of the best things I ever learned, because I did go to a panel, actually while I was working for my boss as a paralegal, was how to structure your day. You're always in court in the morning. I was in court this morning. Court is always in the morning, usually, unless they carry it over to 2 o'clock and then your whole day's blown. But if you are in court in the morning, I typically do not return phone calls till after 4 o'clock. I need time to come back to the office. I need time to manage my day and also what's going on for tomorrow. I then instruct my assistants to say to the clients, so nobody's pissed off. Everybody knows what's going to happen. I am not calling you back till after 4. And if it's a prospective client, they are told immediately that I will give a call back to them within 72 hours. Unless it's an absolute emergency and there's something going tomorrow, then maybe if we feel that it's something we want to handle, perhaps. So I would schedule your day like that, instead of constantly, because you have to write motions, you have to write memos, you have to write whatever you're writing, your complaints, your service, your depositions, I mean, these are all strategies that you want to make sure, in my opinion, you are using that time wisely. It can be very distracting when you're trying to run the business, part of it, and also writing, and you have your secretaries coming in, you need to return this phone call, you need to do this, you need to do that. And next thing you know, it's piecemeal, you got to start over again, well, was this an hour, or was this point 2? And you know, you just focus. You just focus like you would in a library, you shut your door, you say, listen, this is my time to write, this is my time to draft. Clients do not expect you, when you're a small firm, although we like to think because we're a small firm, we're hands-on, they do not, when they're told, and you manage their expectations, they will not expect you to call, like, immediately. So these are kind of, again, some of the tips. I don't know if I'm getting too minute, but the other, let's see, Facebook. I'm just going to, you know, again, I come back to the reputation integrity. You are your own marketer, obviously. So again, I have a Facebook page. You know, I limit what I put on Facebook. I will tell you right now, it's like the #1 cause of divorce. It's a horrible, horrible thing for a lot of reasons, but it's also a fantastic resource for information and family and, you know, connecting, obviously. But I will say that your reputation starts now. So whatever you have on there, and if you're not really, you know, creating a good self-positive image, just remember that those contacts are your possible referrals or possible clients even. So just beware. I mean, I just, you know, I say that and some people don't have them at all. I don't think you need to go that route. I certainly use, it's a good, I enjoy it, but let's see what else. Oh, I was gonna say on the payment purposes, that for client consultations, you know, when you get started, I mean, there's the whole business side of getting started in a firm, which obviously Jared can guide you. But when you do begin and you start and you're getting clients in, one of the things that I have learned real quickly off the bat is they will use you. They will use you and abuse you over and over. So one of the things that I have implemented is that I generally do not do client consultations on the phone at all. I usually, unless it's an emergency, and we do take credit cards and they pay. Because the reason being is that you are automatically conflicted out of that case. And that is business that has just walked out your door. So they are just looking for basically some free advice. And if that other side needed you, you cannot take it. So now you're out of an entire case because you decided to give 20 minutes of free advice. I would strongly, strongly urge you to not do the phone conferences again unless it's an emergency basis, which they do happen. I mean, they certainly do happen. So you have to make that judgment call. But when you do bring them in, you know, you don't have to charge them $175 to sit down for an hour. But you certainly can say it's going to be a half an hour and it's going to be $25 if you just want to say. So they show up. One of the things that we do, the first thing that I implemented when I started working for Rod in 2003 was an electronic file management system. It basically tracks your entire contact list, your calendar list, your files, obviously. And it has what's called a conflict check. So every client that I sit with and the other side is entered into this database because ultimately, I mean, you cannot remember. You just cannot. It's impossible. I mean, I have a pretty good memory for faces and names, but at this point now, I'm only, you know, 2.5 years deep in practicing, and it's like I get to see other attorneys even, and I'm confused. Like, I know you, but I can't remember. So you definitely want to. Anytime you do sit down with someone, you want to make sure they do a file intake. So that way it's a case intake sheet, you get their address, you get their phone number. It's also a good way to create a database so that you send out marketing flyers if you were to do that. I don't necessarily do that, but I know a lot of small firms that do that. Even electronic marketing, you could get their email and send them, hey, we're doing a seminar on wills or whatever, or real estate, I don't know. So it's a good way to get a database going, and certainly for conflict checks, because obviously the BBO is the end-all, and you want to make sure you're compliant with that. Yes?
Did you create that electronic file database system, or is that a program that you purchased?
Originally, when I came in, it was handled through Outlook, actually, because they have like a contact manager, right? So there are a lot of legal software packages that you can purchase. And so what I did was I researched, and a lot of them will send you a free trial, and you can figure out which works for you. We use Amicus Attorney, and I love it. It's 100% for us. There's, you learn, just like anything, right? You have to kind of figure out. But since we've used it and implemented it in 2003, I mean, it's been time efficiency-wise, profitability, it's worth the investment, in my opinion. And again, we talk about client funds, the accounting systems. You need to obviously manage your trust fund accounts, and the biggest hot water is who's managing these funds. So I urge you to make sure the business side of it too is that you limit who's actually dealing with the checking accounts, and how they're getting appropriated and when you're getting invoiced. I mean, the number one thing that is hard to do is your routine. You got to build your routine that works for your schedule. So we bill once a week. We may not bill every client once a week, but we have a bookkeeper. It's billed. The escrows are taken out. You cannot leave a bill sitting out and wait for the client to approve or whatever. You do it. You get paid. A lot of new attorneys and a lot of new businesses are afraid to get paid. They think they're not worthy of their time. But I'm going to tell you right now that you are. And it's the only thing you have is time. So you have to make sure that it's held efficiently. And I know I'm taking all the time right now, so I will pass it off. But that's basically, that's what I have to say.
Tony, that's a tough act to follow.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to say much. Like Amber, I basically was a part-time night student as well, working full-time in healthcare for South Coast Hospital Groups, and came to the school and I regret it for 1 minute. Left here, took the bar, and worked for a fairly large firm with 7 offices scattered within Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, and it was truly a learning experience to get thrown to the wolves, to say the least. The associates were involved in a lot of the partner meetings, and over a short period of time, roughly about a year, I was able to take over one of the offices in Worcester while working in conjunction with the Warwick, Rhode Island office, as well as the one in Narragansett, Rhode Island. And it worked out really well. Shortly thereafter, I was approached by a managing partner at a large law firm in Milford, Massachusetts, and took a position there for about 2 years. In working with the real estate division, we did a lot of developing for Targets, Walmarts, lease work. We had a very large real estate department doing conveyancing. And every quarter that we met, I couldn't believe the amount of money that this department was making for the law firm. And yet, you'd be working, like she said, 70 hours a week. You're there Saturdays, you're there Sundays. You're putting the hours in. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. But the one thing that I did, and I continue to do today, is I surround myself with the right people, the right paralegals, the right accounting staff, the right attorneys, the whole shoot and shebang, because reputation is everything. When I did leave, and I won't mention the law firm's name because I'm still very loyal to them, and went out on my own, I did take a lot of the clients that I had developed there, came with me. There was no covenant of non-compete, none of that. It was just mutual, I'm leaving, I want to go out on my own type of thing. And a lot of the clients followed us, and a lot of it was corporate work. So I do work for large credit unions, large banks, and the public, all very, very unique. But the conveyancing piece for me and real estate developing has been a big part of our practice for a long time. We also do a lot of personal injury work, bankruptcy work, probate, and we keep it to really 3 or 4 disciplines at any given time. In 2007, we grew to over 45 employees in our office, and it was completely chaos. And when I mean chaos, it was chaos. We went national with South Coast Title and Escrow, and it was about 100 hours a week. You literally didn't sleep. We covered the West Coast, so people were working until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And again, your reputation is everything, as they say, and if you're not taking care of your corporate clients, they get very angry with you. The 9 o'clock there, at night, it's midnight here for us, but you're still dealing with a lot of through the refi boom in the purchase market, it was extremely busy. On top of trying to manage a business, bring in the right people to do the right job, and it takes a lot of time to hire, train the right people, get people comfortable with the right type of software, get people comfortable with conveyance software, accounting software. It truly is. You are running a business, but yet you want to practice law. In 2008, I made the conscientious decision to basically shrink the practice. It was just too overwhelming. She has written down on her paper time off.
Question mark.
Question
mark. Yeah, like, wait a minute, what?
There wasn't any. In 8 years, I watched I have 2 sons, I watched both my sons grow up, and I really get to spend a lot of time with them. They drive very expensive cars, just so you know. I tried to make it up to them, but now I try to take off as much time as I can and spend as much time as I can with both my sons and my wife. That kind of changed things up a little bit. We're still very busy. It's my partner, John Sheehan, who didn't go to school here, went to New England School of Law. And we're a group of 12, and we still stay very active practicing in those same areas. We no longer look for the little guy to work for. We still stay very focused with corporate America. We do a ton of marketing. We literally put about 70 commercials a day on Cox Communication, just focused in the Rhode Island market, basically for the personal injury, the bankruptcy work. We've had a great relationship with them. Believe it or not, it's not very expensive to market those type of commercials. Each spot's like $2, and it's a 30-second spot. We do the demographics homework, and it's worked really, really well. It's been very, very successful. And referrals, second to none. We do work with a ton of attorneys in Rhode Island and in Massachusetts as well with referral work. I practice in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Delaware. Several of the credit unions have corporate facilities and offices in Delaware, and 4 to 5 times a year I'm there as well. We also do a lot of work for, we do an awful lot of work with the banks and credit unions with regulations, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Federal Home Loan. We bundle an awful lot of money. I got 4 guys that do nothing but bundle securities for these credit unions and sell them on the secondary market. So that's been a big part of our practice as well. It's been a lot of fun, but a lot of work, so get ready. It's not easy, it really isn't.
Your title and escrow company,
Yes.
are you allowed to use that for your own conveyances during closings, or is that some type of conflict?
What do you mean my own conveyances?
Saying the work you do in your real estate practice.
South Coast Title and Escrow does pretty much all of the real estate conveyancing work. Anything that falls outside of that, it's Sanursha Sheehan. If we're developing a 40-acre parcel, Sanursha Sheehan does the developing. We're the ones that go to pretty much the zoning board hearings, the whole 9 yards. Yeah, it's the attorney that shows up. South Coast Title and Escrow is licensed in 37 states with affiliations in the balance of the 13. So we're able to do conveyance work throughout the entire country. And it's strictly purchase refi work.
So all the closing docs, all those
Correct.
kind of things.
And we draft all the closing docs. We work with a company out of Utah called IDS. All the doc packages are custom made the way we want them for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. And right now the lending arena has shrunk tremendously. So you're either doing a Fannie loan, a Freddie loan, Federal Home Loan, or a portfolio loan for an investor, because they're all the same. Or you're doing FHA. So yeah, if you're slick and you get to learn this business, there's a lot of satisfaction in it. Not lately, because we do a fair amount of foreclosure work too, but it's tough. It's tough taking someone's home and watching them cry in the hallway as you walk into, just happened last week, New London, Connecticut has strict foreclosure laws, so you can literally put the homeowner on notice once, go to court, take their house. So it's pretty tough. Yeah, how she does family law, there's no way I could do it. No way. Not with the emotional piece of it.
I just don't think about it.
Yeah.
Did I say that?
Well, one of the things that I feel like a lot of people have talked about on the panel, and I'm sure Tom would agree, considering what a hectic day he's had today getting here. It seems like there's, you're worried when business is slow and you're worried when business is busy. And I, before coming to Southern New England and now UMass, I've always had a history of working in small organizations, and that's part of the beast. That's the nature of the beast of a small organization, that when things are slow, everybody gets worried, and there's not enough work, there's not enough, how are we going to survive? And then when it gets really busy, you say, gee, there's too much work. How are we all going to get it done with our limited staffing or whatever? And there's, it seems that I'm hearing from people that you very rarely hit the sweet spot. So I guess maybe one of the takeaways is to appreciate it when you do, when things are just balanced, just right. And I think what Tony was really saying is that he really decided to reorganize his business, that there was a little bit more opportunity for that sweet spot to arrive. And that was a conscientious decision he made about lifestyle and business and finances. And I think that that's the balance that you're going to hear over and over again. And depending on where you are in your life, whether you're single or you have young children or you're married or you have no children or you're not married, all these things are going to have impacts on whether or not having a small business structure is going to really work for you.
One thing we took advantage of that, and I think hopefully will be easier for you guys, technology. As Jared said, to tail into the panel here, you buy the best software that your money can afford and implement it and force everybody in your office to use it.
It's worth the money.
It's worth all the money. We, our conveyance software is second to none. We spent a fortune on it, but we run 12 IALTA accounts throughout the entire country with Bank of America. And we have an in-house accountant that sits in one office and handles all the money. There's only 3 people in that office that are authorized to write checks. Screwing up an IALTA account is the fastest way to get disbarred and go to jail.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very fast.
And
If you don't have somebody monitoring that 24/7, watching the wires come in electronically, watching them get faxed, you will get in serious trouble.
There's a good story in Mass Lawyers Weekly. A guy named Richard, you guys might know him, Richard Daniels. His office is across the street from mine, and that's exactly how he ended up. Collections, yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly how we ended up basically agreed to be disbarred, is because he took fees for filing cases, never did, and over time it caught up to him, and that's it. It's over. 30 years.
And all of that debt you accrued in law school, and then you have no way of paying it back because you lost your license to practice.
You know, one of the other things that was mentioned by Amber is the billing weekly. If you can do that, that's really, really important. When I was doing my MBA work, I did a study on that particular issue. And non-retainer funds, if you bill a client and on a regular basis, we did it monthly, that they paid something like 90% of the time. But if you waited over 30 days, an additional 30 days, it dropped by like 25%, and it goes down and down and down. So you've got to continually bill promptly. You know, everybody, like especially criminal clients, you know, when they're on the other side of the bars, they'll pay you anything. All right, and then when you get them out, they're saying like, geez, anybody could have done that. This is a slam dunk. Yeah. So you really got to bill regularly. Get your money up front with retainers if you can.
So Tom, well,
yeah,
we were just pretty much everybody was talking about how they got into small and solo practice, what they think the skills are to be successful in a small solo practice, what your day is like. The good stuff and the bad stuff, you know, about being your own boss?
I'm thinking about like some of the important things that I wish I had known then, what I know now, and I apologize if I'm beating the networking dead horse right now, because I'm sure everybody's networking.
No, I didn't.
But everybody did. That's why I wanted to preface that with that. I can't tell you how important networking is. When you first start out like I did, I'm a general practice guy now. I do criminal defense. I do family law. I do a whole variety of civil cases, and when you first start out, you're gonna be so intimidated by the volume of material, and you're gonna need somebody who can point you in the right direction. And you know, Pat Matthews can tell you, you know, one of the first big cases I got. Pat, yeah, you look at him right now. I maybe called him a few too many times on that case, but you want to. The point of networking is you want to have multiple people you can call on different groups of topics. So that way you're not, when you first start out, you're going to need a lot of help, and you don't want to keep annoying the same person over and over again. As Amber is my family law guru. Okay, when I have like a super big family law question, you know, I save the good ones for her. The more networking events you go to, like I have like it's almost like a baseball card book with binder of business cards, and there's like 6 different people I can call for a family law case. There's 8 different people I can call from a criminal law case, and you need those resources to help you, point you in the right direction. Because if you don't use those resources, you're going to end up spending hours and hours and hours spinning your wheels, which you don't want to do. Time is precious, especially when you really start to get busy, and stuff's really going to start to get going. You can't waste your time, not at least getting that foundation and the compass pointing in the right direction. And then you can't be calling people, asking them to do your research for you. But you can certainly call them to, at least like I'm saying, point you in the right direction so that you can get in onto Lexis or whatever searching database you're going to use to get the ultimate answer to your question. But in the beginning, the procedural stuff, especially when you got cases in the Superior Court, is crazy, and you're not going to know anything. Literally, every single time that you try to do something, it's like you're learning how to walk for the first time.
I think I was in court the first time you were in court. I was like, you have to walk up to the table.
She was, and that's another thing I can tell you, and I wish somebody had told me this at the time. When you first start out, and this might be a concern of yours, they're always talking about how public speaking is everyone's worst nightmare. You're going to be nervous, and if you're nervous, it's okay. I was a nervous guy when I first started, and I remember the exact day she was talking about. It was about 2 years ago now. I think I was in, Brockton? In front of Judge Sabatis in Brockton. I was there for a motion for a late answer. Right? You just walk up to the podium, you nod your head, and you move, and you leave. That's it. And you could tell my leg was shaking a little bit, and my voice was shaking. It's going to happen to the majority of the people out there, and you're going to be scared of it. And that was the biggest demon for me. That was the scariest demon I think I've ever beaten in my entire life.
Well, what's funny about that, Tom, is that I've often, because I was the same way in my first hearing, I was literally shaking. And the interesting part is that you see these pro se litigants, and they just don't give a shit. Like, they're walking up, they're mouthing off, they're in jeans, they're in a t-shirt. But you have your entire livelihood on the line, and this is it. This is your moment. You've trained, you've taken the bar, and now you're here. And it's like, oh my God, I'm about to throw up.
It's very intimidating, and a lot of you guys are going to be super intimidated by that, and you're going to be scared. But it's okay.
You're going to be thinking about this moment.
You're going. Trust me, I went through it myself. I looked that demon in the eyes, and there was a long time where I didn't know if I was going to be able to defeat it. And you will defeat it. It's going to take some time, but before you know it, like suddenly you're a little bit less nervous, and it'll go away. But it's going to be scary, and it's going to be there. But don't let it, dissuade you from joining this profession and going out on your own and doing it. Because everybody sitting in this room today, if we can all do it, you guys can all do it also. Don't let that demon scare you. You can beat it. Yeah, I wish somebody had told me that at the time.
What you're going to do though is that be very friendly with clerks.
Yes.
They will save your life. And
the court clerks.
Court clerks, and I make a point when I go in there. It's probably embarrassing how much I kowtow to them, and I'll tell them, listen, I'm stupid, I don't know what I'm doing, please help me, and then they'll take you by the hand. People who go in there and are arrogant, I'm an attorney, and you see it every once in a while, I just step back, I don't want to be next to it, because they can then sink you, and we all have those stories. I know my first time in court, when you do a criminal plea, you do a thing called a green sheet. I typed it out before I went to court. Everybody, the judge actually said, "Where did you put the typewriter?" He was like,
"This is the nicest green sheet I've ever seen."
Exactly, because they're done normally in court. And actually, my client was getting the lawyer I worked for was Danny Turcotte. I don't know if you know him.
Yep.
He told me that
he and Julie Lynch are partners.
Yes.
Julie is speaking at the program I mentioned earlier next Tuesday, the Hang Your Shingle Trap City I'm Wary.
He told me that my client should get a 1-year continuance without a finding. Okay, and so that's what I was going there to get. And so the prosecutor wanted something else, and then the judge says, "Well, I'm going to give him 18 months, an 18-month quaff, which stands for continuance without a finding." But I insisted on getting my continuance without a finding. No, Your Honor, I said, I want a continuance without a finding. He goes, "That's what it stands for, Mr. Matthews."
Whatever, Judge, okay?
Tomato,
you call it this, I'm calling
But those kind of things are going to happen, like Tom said. But the thing is that don't let it dissuade you, because everybody's friendly. And I'll tell you what, most times if you're sitting in court, there's a guy sitting next to you, you can ask him, "Hey, listen, what should I do?" And you'll be amazed at how much people help you.
And that goes, I just have one last point on the being nice. I would say my theory, my practice is you get a lot more with honey than you do with vinegar. And I know it's like grandma's old saying, right? And but it's really true. It goes through your adversary, your opponents, and also the litigants. I mean, all the litigants that are pro
Also the
se.
people who work for you in your office.
Yeah, sometimes they don't get the honey, but you know, they mostly get the honey, unless I'm stressed. And so I would suggest that even with the litigants, sometimes be like, are you tricking me? You know, what's going on? And it's like, you know, use it. I mean, rope, pull. You know, it's like, use what you have, use your personality. And certainly, I would suggest that becoming an adversary out of the gate, well, I'm an attorney and you can't do that, is not going to work to your advantage. And again, it goes back to the integrity and the reputation. And certainly you want your fellow colleagues to know that she's very reasonable. Because these judges, just like the budget crisis and all that, they're overwhelmed. They do not want to hear these cases. So if you can try to work it out and you start to understand the theory of your case and maybe there is some liability on this side or that side or whatever, and you can avoid the court conflict, I mean, you're getting paid regardless, so what do you care if it's in front of the judge or not? And as long as your client's happy and managed expectations, again, I would suggest that it's a really good practice. I mean, obviously it's very different in the commercial sense, but when you're in a face-to-face type situation with a client, honey.
Tom, let me ask you a couple of questions. We had talked about earlier this startup checklist, and we've talked about a couple of things on it. I wanted to get your impression because
I did have an opportunity to peruse it, and there's excellent points on this list. And I see the rent, furnishing your office area, and I apologize if Amber already touched on this because I know we're in the same school of thought on this. But it's very expensive to furnish your office, and there are many alternative resources you can use to furnish your office. And Craigslist is one of them. Don't ever underestimate Craigslist. I have a $2,500 desk in my office, mid-condition, that I got for $250. All right, especially in this period of time when you get all kinds of businesses going out of business, there are fire sales going on all over the place. So be a thrifty shopper. It's okay. Nobody knows that you spent $250 and you had to call, some random guy off Craigslist and to go get that.
In some shady corner of Brockton.
Yeah.
Whatever.
They're not going to go in your office and ask you where you got this.
You need an armed guard.
Don't feel bad to decorate it from home. My partner, his dad started a company they ended up selling for $20 million. Their first office was decorated with all the stuff from their house. Everything in my office, the couch, the tables, all of it is from my house. I mean, my apartment's kind of empty. But you know what? I spend most of my time in the office anyway. So.
You gotta sleep there, yeah.
What about the MCLE, all the books, all the forms, all that kind of stuff?
Those are great, and I see you have the MBA and the Bristol County Bar Association Lawyer Referral Service. That's one of the greatest things you can do when you first start out. And unfortunately for Mr. Matthews, one of the cases I got was from that list, which was a result of me calling him over and over again. So you get some crazy cases off there, but 9 out of 10 cases you're gonna end up tossing, but every once in a while you get a good case, and if they're paying you money, that's good. And one of the biggest things that is tough when you first start out is weeding the cases out, and I'm sure they've already explained this to you, but you don't want to waste time. They say the best case you take is the one that you don't take. And you don't want to get stuck in this quagmire where you take these junky cases, and the Lawyer Referral Service is a great way of learning how to get rid of the bad cases. Because you're going to get a lot of them, but every once in a while you're going to get that gem or that diamond in the rough. And you can make a lot of money off of it, potentially. So when you first start out, that's the first two things you should do in terms of getting clients. Join the Bristol County Bar Association Lawyer Referral Service, join the MBA Referral Service, and you get clients that are going to be calling you all the time. They might not be great clients, or they might not be paying clients that you're not going to take, but you might get some cases out of it.
As far as computerized search things, though, I use Lois Law. We use it. It's real simple to use. It's relatively inexpensive, and what's great about it is if you only have to buy. We buy Rhode Island and Massachusetts libraries, but if they cite to a case that's a federal case, or if they cite to MCLE, even though you don't own those databases, they'll bring you to that particular section. So it's very good, and we also use the MCLEs.
And also CaseMap, which is provided through, is provided through your membership at the Mass Bar. That's free, and it's a fabulous resource tool. And also, if you have an iPad or an iPod, you get, Basscase for free. So, and that's a huge resource, which when you're in court and they're throwing out a case name, you're like, oh my God, what is this case?
What about, do any of you guys use these things? Lawguru.com, solosays.com, totalattorneys.com, Turbo Law,
Yes.
anybody?
I'm on Solo Says. It's a message board. You can post your messages, but the most important thing with Solo Says is that they have these monthly dinners, and it's the greatest networking tool ever. You meet all kind. I know Fabian does. You're on Solo Says, right?
There's
You're one
also another one too. I think Jared's on it. Starting out solo,
Yep.
which is also very good for anything you can think of, from the stupidest question like how do I file a complaint? You know, the stuff they don't teach you in law school. You can shoot it on there. Nobody thinks you're an idiot because we're all in the same position. You know?
And that's starting at solo.com?
Yeah, it's run by a guy named Gabriel Chong.
Yeah, actually, I think it was Julie Lynch who works with Dan Turcott.
That's the
She was
second
one
name
who had
I've
mentioned
heard
that
that.
to me, and I forgot to put it on the list.
With respect to turbo law, we subscribe to it. I'm not a big fan.
Yeah.
It's not, the thing is, if you know the program, it's good, but if you're gonna, especially, I don't know about you guys, you have a fairly quick turnover of people as secretaries and things like that. It's hard to keep on training people on it, so.
My turbo law theory is we have it in our office. I think it's pretty useless when it comes to real estate, criminal law. It's very, very helpful for me in my divorce practice. So depending on where you want to go with your practice, it could be helpful. It's only as good as the information you put into it. It's basically, for those of you who don't know what turbo law is, it's a program that's designed to come up with documents quickly. It's a document database versus a file management database. So that if I need to put together, like for example today I had to put together a motion for short order notice so that I could have another motion heard on Tuesday. I literally, my secretary puts in the information that we need. I can just pull up the document. It's already inserted, print, sign, I'm good. And you don't have to bill for the .1 that might have taken. You can bill for the actual intellectual property of that document. So what it would have taken me to prepare the document, a .4 or whatever. And the idea is that it's supposed to, again, make your practice much more efficient. It also helps to alleviate mistakes. Mistakes are huge. You do not want to make them if you can help it. Like, for example, you're in Bristol County, but it says Plymouth. Or your docket number is ending in, a DR, but it's an actual paternity case. Like, you need to make sure that these little errors that the clerks start to remember are not made. So TurboLaw helps you to streamline those kinds of errors, because when you have your document database, which you will be growing over the years, you go in and you find that one case, you're like, oh, I had a case just like that, I'm going to go in and just insert what I need. But you forgot to insert the name, or you forgot to insert the docket. So it helps you to alleviate that type of error, which again is incredibly annoying to the clerks and also to yourself, because you're like, wow, I'm so smart, but yet I can't put this together. So that's my take on TurboLaw.
They have a good product called Turbo Billing. It's a nice product. Yeah, and it's cheap too. It's like $100 a month.
Oh yeah.
So things that you might suggest to people who want to either start a small firm, a solo firm, work at a small firm, or work for a solo practitioner. Some of the things that people have said in the past is, clerk is a law student. Join the local bar association to meet those folks as a law student or as a recent graduate. Maybe volunteer, doing some things so that you're in court and meeting people while you're waiting to figure out exactly what you want to do or what you can do, so that you're, getting your reputation built as you're going along. Any other sort of thoughts, advice, tips about how some of these people can make it happen?
I think intern is the best way you can do it. I have an intern right now from this school. I regularly have interns from Roger Williams. I've hired probably over the years 3 or 4 people who were my interns. And I'll tell you what, if you have an opportunity to showcase what you can do, and also you'll learn while you're doing, like for instance, we were talking, Tony and I were talking about it. You tell somebody, listen, you got to do a motion, and they say, well, what form is that? Well, listen, there's no form. You just type it up, and that's another thing people just don't realize. It'll be like a motion to continue, and they say, well, what does that look like? Yeah, they don't realize all you need to do is sit down at a word processor. You make up your own headings and everything else, and that kind of stuff. Like I said, nobody taught you that in school. If you go work as an intern, you're going to learn all those techniques. And so if you do become a solo practitioner, you're going to be a lot farther ahead than a person who just graduated and decided that they want to do this.
Yeah, because this is a tough business. I mean, certainly it's very competitive right now, clearly with the economic times. I mean, jobs are hard to find. And one of the things, as far as, you want a hearing?
I have a hearing, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Thank you.
One of the things, I can't remember, I'm just trying to remember, what's the undercover boss, right? Like, they go in and they do all the basic jobs and they, see the levels. It's kind of the same idea. I mean, you're potentially starting your own business. So to become an intern and or an assistant or something, to be able to see kind of on the ground level, potentially what you're going to be doing, what you need your people to do, right? So I feel like the training at that bottom level, although sometimes it's hard because we're attorneys or we're law students, so we have these like egos that need to get pushed down a little bit. And the idea is that you learn what you need to know so that when you are running your own business, you know what to expect from the people that are working now for you. And by the way, their payroll is on the line of your work. So, again, I mean, it goes to what you expect, what's reasonable, you get an idea of how long things take, and that certainly is going to help you figure out how to manage your employees, because again, that's another facet of business which ultimately isn't any fun. So,
I have another question for everybody. What about deciding about where to locate your office, what hours to have? I know some people talk about having one night a week that they're open late to let people in, or some people want to work from home. Some people do a virtual office where they have all their meetings at their clients, depending on the kind of practice they have. Thoughts about that, Fabian?
The kind of clients we tend to get, we chose Quincy because you don't have to pay for parking. You usually get 2 hours. It's right off the tee. We had looked at space downtown, but ultimately downtown Boston. But ultimately, we decided that it just would have been too much of an inconvenience for some people to make it to us. So we try to make it convenient for them to come to us.
So you thought about the demographics and about the kind of population that was then in Quincy that would serve the kind of business you wanted to have? Was that part of it as well?
Exactly, and it's convenient. It's close enough to Boston where you can jump on the red line, or you can just take back roads and get there. So we that's the main reason why we chose Quincy. Also, they gave us a great deal on rent. I actually found it on Craigslist, so I couldn't say no. When they gave us the deal on rent, I couldn't say no. I said, all right, Quincy it is. So.
Tom?
Well, a lot of the location stuff, I mean, personally, and a lot of you guys, we're in Bristol County obviously right now. It's a good chance you're going to end up in Bristol County. In my case, I interned in the DA's office in Bristol County. And that was kind of like the seed that was planted in terms of the networking that I did and the lawyers that I met. Every single, even within different towns in Bristol County, there's different communities, and then the New Bedford people and the Fall River people. And you go to another county and it's like you're in another galaxy. So when you spend that time when you're in law school, and I encourage you all, it's pretty easy to do it, sign up, call the DA's office, do that internship. It's a huge pain in the butt because you're studying for finals and you're doing midterms. But if you do a good enough job there, you might get a job there. And I see the CPCS stuff on here is on there. If you ultimately,
I've been not taking interns.
CPCS. Well, ultimately, I mean, if you do want to become a bar advocate, obviously being a DA is obviously a helpful stepping stone to
Who's
doing
not taking
that.
interns? What did you say?
CPCS, the public defender.
The public defender unit, they're not taking interns right now?
This summer.
All right, well,
In Bristol County.
Right.
Right.
In Bristol County.
In Bristol County, yeah. Take that up. If call up the DA's office and find out if they're offering internships. That's a great way to meet people and get your feet wet. And in my case, that's what resulted in me being in Bristol County ultimately. My family started here. I love you all.
Me too, Tom.
So it seems to me that there's one thing I really want to hit on, and I think everybody talked about it, but I don't know if we really fleshed it out a lot, and I know it's over the time we said we'd go, but I think this is critical, which is mentors. I love the vision of Tom's book of baseball cards. I mean, I had older brothers, and I can remember what that was like, and some people can remember having a Rolodex, but the fact that it's organized by practice area, and it's different than talking about the networking you're doing to build your practice. This is a lot of networking you're building to build yourself. And Fabian talks about getting a formal mentor through a bar association. Amber, I assume Rod was your mentor because you worked for him for so many years before you started, but maybe I'm wrong, and I wonder, Tony, if you have any thoughts about that, and what do people think about having a mentor or being a mentor to someone else?
I've been doing this a long time now, and I still turn to a lot of colleagues for specific questions that, you know, you just don't have the time to do the research on, and you know they have the answer to it. I can think of 5 guys in Rhode Island alone that I probably talk to at least once a week. And they do the same thing with me. You know, they'll bounce some ideas on a development that might be going on, they ran into a roadblock where we specialize in that particular area. So you have to have that relationship with a number of colleagues.
And it's reciprocal is really critical, so
Absolutely.
that when you
Absolutely.
develop your own expertise, you know, expect that people will ask you too.
Yeah,
Well, the phone rings,
Yeah.
and you take the call.
Yeah,
You try to spend as little time as you possibly can,
but you have to.
but you have to, yeah.
that baseball card book I'm telling you about is your virtual law firm, okay? I don't know how many business cards I have in it now. It's almost full, and every single business card in that book is one of my mentors. And you have to have those resources, because if you don't, you're gonna drive yourself crazy, you're not gonna know what you're doing. And like Amber said earlier, you know, the old adage of honey, not vinegar, you spread the honey, you know, talk to these people, and if they like you enough and they find you competent when you're talking to them, they might even throw you a case.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what happened to
You know,
us.
and another thing, we were talking about those dinners. A lot of people, you know, for solo says they have a dinner group. You know, they have Bristol County. That's the SANG group, I think. I'm in Bristol County. You know, most people conventionally you go to the dinner group in your county, but I purposely actually go to an out of the county group because when they get cases down in Bristol County, they don't want to go down to Bristol County. You know, they don't want to go to Fall River or New Bedford. So it's perfect because you might have cases you can throw them and get your 1/3 referral fee for them. I mean, a lot of times you pass a personal injury case on, or a lot of cases where it's ethically compliant, you're going to get 1/3 of whatever they get, 1/3 of their 1/3. So you can throw them cases, and they'll throw you cases down because you're the Bristol County guy at the dinner where everybody else is from, you know, Suffolk County, Middlesex County, Norfolk County. So that's
So
a
it
helpful
sounds like
resource.
a big thing also that everybody's talking about. I mean, when you talk about really the kind of skills that you need to be successful, is you have to be comfortable talking to people. You can't be shy, that you actually purposely put yourself in a situation where you might not know anybody, just so that then they can get to know you because you're not from that area, as opposed to going to the functions where you do know everybody and you get to kind of socialize with your local colleagues. So some part of this, the confidence in the public speaking that you were talking about a first hearing and things like that, it sounds like that's a critical skill.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the idea is that in a large law firm, you have 100 lawyers, right? Guess what? That's their mentor program. So they have the ability to ask a lot of people a lot of questions. So certainly, and because no one lawyer knows all the answers, it's impossible, there's just way too much law. Similarly, there'll be times where it'll be me and Rod or Tom, or me and Tom, or me and Jeff, and we're just sitting there and we're kind of shooting, well, what would you say if I said this? And what would you do if I did this? And I think sometimes it's funny because the girls will look and be like, oh, they're not even working. But it's very important. I mean, you have to be able to flush out, well, and then, oh, I didn't even think of that issue, or that's a really good point. I need to make sure I'm ready to be prepared to answer that point. And I am on the board of the Bristol County Bar Association. I'm also involved with the Mass Bar.
There's also a Bristol County Bar Association social event tonight.
Yeah, we do it every
Amber
month.
coordinates.
Obviously, Paul, Attorney Peza, is here. He comes, you know, almost every month, and it's really important. I mean, I didn't attend school with him, but we are connected. We know. I know his associate, and again, it's how you create your web. And I would suggest that the Plymouth District Bar, probably for me, has been most influential because it's not a younger bar, it's actually an older bar, so that I am able to, again, pick up the phone, right? So I meet friends and colleagues, and I'm able to say, I know he does a lot of Superior Court work, and now I'm going to talk to Pat. So like, hey, Pat, remember when we were on the panel together? Because it's really, again, it's important to be able to feel comfortable with whoever you do reach out to, because the biggest thing is you want to make sure you understand what you're asking and that you get the answer you need. So to be able to have the patience and work with whoever you choose, and it's going to be multiple people, but you know, to have confidence enough to know that I need to ask this question, otherwise I'm not doing my job.
Well, I think it's a lot of the takeaway that I've been trying to kind of the little tips and pieces of advice that I started off with from last time, and some of the ones I wanted to add from this time. I think the one I gave the example of from last time was take time off, try to find time to take off. know your limits, buy case management software. We've heard a lot of that this time, and some new ones this time I think I've heard is, you know, set expectations, which is probably good in every relationship you have, but it's really good when it's a business relationship as well. Be friendly to the court clerks. Surround yourself with the right people. I think that, save, this one I had been last time, but it was echoed again. Save your phone calls for the last half an hour of the day. Whatever these little tips are, you know, if you walk away from this with one of these nuggets and it really makes an impact, that's really the goal, because I think that's how everybody else kind of arrived at them themselves.
I'd also add, get a 30-second elevator speech. I learned this from BNI. Someone's going to ask you what you do, and I'm quick. You know, we're a law firm that does primarily immigration, but we also do these areas as well. People love that, your 30-second elevator speech.
And the elevator speech comes from the fact that within 30 seconds that you walk into an elevator, the door closes, you say hello to your friend, it opens on the next floor, and they walk out. You're able to give them the pitch without interrupting yourself and with them understanding exactly what it is that you do. And that works also when you're looking for a job. Critical.
There's a great book by a guy named Thunberg. I actually got this from Tom Cleary, who works with Amber, How to Run a Law Practice. I have it in my library at home. It's great. It covers almost every single area you could think of running a practice. Go through it and get familiar with it if you're serious.
Any questions?
Many.
I think this panel,
Yeah.
you know, I think thanks to all
I
of
would
you,
agree. I
thanks
think
to
you guys
Leslie
really
for
had a
putting
lot.
it together.
And I love to talk, so feel free to, if you want to give me a call, find me on the internet, shoot me an email.
Well, why don't we say thank you to our panelists, and please come up and talk with them afterwards.
Oh, and the Young Lawyers Social is tonight, so you can get
At the
started on your
Rose
networking.
Alley?
Yep,
In New Bedford.